Hi, and welcome back to Garden Ninja. Now today the sun is out and I'm up here in Bury and I'm dealing with a really overlooked back garden. But rather than entirely redesign it, what I've done is change the planting scheme, because sometimes you don't need to do wholesale hard landscaping and rip everything out. So in this example I'm going to be showing you how, if you look over there, you can screen off against rather unsightly windows and properties using a mix of trees and herbaceous shrubs and perennials. So I'm going to keep you updated today and check back from me, the Garden Ninja, on how I'm going to turn this into a really desirable, cosy private garden. So here's the garden before. Now it's a nice sized garden, and as you can see it's quite long. But if you look at the very bottom, you'll see that grey building with the cladding on the front, and that's a new build house that's going up. So unfortunately now the owners feel like they're really heavily overlooked. There's a number of other windows that peer in onto the garden and they feel like they need more privacy. So this example, rather than being about hard landscaping, is how we can use softer landscaping elements, trees and planting plans to both provide privacy and also distract the guests in the garden from looking up and looking at those windows. So we're not talking about completely blocking them out, but we're giving like broken views, distraction technique, and pulling your eye down the garden into the borders rather than up and out towards that house. So the trees have just arrived, and here's one of the examples behind me in the distance. Now these are an Acer platanoides Globosum, and they've been pruned in a way that gives them kind of a goblet, almost lollipop look. So we're going to use these as punctuation marks throughout the garden to help screen off the privacy without putting up huge walls. I've given them a bit of a prune and a tidy, and I'm going to show you later on the effect you can get by using a few specimen trees really well. So the trees are now in, I've staked them and I'm giving them a thorough watering. It's set to be a scorcher today, about 25 degrees. Planting trees in this weather isn't ideal, so you need to keep them hydrated because they will soon lose water and start to wilt and go ugh. So it's all about hydration today, but they're in, they're level, they've been staked, and the next stage is going to move on to arranging the herbaceous planting, which is going to make this garden sing and look absolutely beautiful. So a little design trick that I'm using in this garden is repetition. Now it's a long skinny garden, there's already some existing borders, but you've got these views here that make the clients feel kind of overlooked and like the privacy's being taken away a little bit. So the whole aim of this planting scheme is to break up that view, which I've shown you before on this channel in other designs, but also to repeat the patterns here near the house further down at the bottom down there. So what you'll see when I show you the planting is that we've got the same plants in different groups going bing, 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 bing all the way down. So your eye is drawn down the garden and not at the house at the back there. So I'm going to carry on and I'll show you some of the example plantings in a bit. So it's the second day of planting here in Manchester. It's about 10 in the morning, the sun is beaming out, it's mega hot. I've remembered my gimbal, so no more shaky cam, but I just want to talk you through some of the plant choices that I've used in this garden. Now the client really liked sort of soft curves and round shapes, and I've reflected that in the planting. So if you can have a look behind me, we've got the box balls there, which is like the evergreen structure, and that's the punctuation. We've then, up there, got the Acer trees that I planted yesterday. Again, that round shape giving structure, diverting eyes away from those overlooked views. In terms of the planting, we've got a mix of sort of tall vertical planting and then softer round shapes. So things like the Echinops have a round globe thistle flower on them. We've also got the geums that kind of form a mound that looks a little bit like a ball, and they're quite heavy plants. So what I've done with the geums is I've dotted some of those around the back with the verbena to give sort of a bit of weight. So totally tangerine, the geum, is quite a large specimen, whereas you've got things like Lady Scarlet, the red geum, which is a lot smaller, so they are near the front. We've also got things like Achillea, we've got a Terracotta and Credo, which is a bright yellow. They're dotted around, they've got silvery foliage and they will just lift the planting up. So we've got the purples, we've got the blues, then we've got the clash, the contrast of the yellows and the oranges. And that planting pattern continues from the house all the way down. So it draws your eye down the garden with consistency. And I'm following those shapes time and time again so that it feels really comfortable and that your eye's being drawn down the garden and you've got that key consistency and repetition. If you didn't do that and you went for sort of a pick and mix planting scheme, you kind of get that disjointed feeling. It doesn't feel too comfortable. So whilst you might think you've got loads of variety and excitement, you can actually kind of cause the opposite effect, where people feel a bit flustered and think, oh, don't really know where to look, I'm just going to look at my feet or stay here. You want to guide people around the garden using your planting and your design. Now, yesterday I talked about different varieties of the same species and how you can get a different effects by working out the growth habit. And a good example is verbena. So we've got Verbena bonariensis at the back, which goes really tall, but you can see through it. And then you've got Verbena lollipop, which I'm planting near the front, which is a smaller specimen. It's got a tighter stem structure and much smaller flowers. So if I was to put bonariensis at the front, it's really tall, it kind of gets in the way, it's distracting. But if I put lollipop in there, it's smaller, so we get the same effect, but I can see through and it makes more sense. So another top tip is you always want to put your taller and heavier specimens towards the back or the middle of a border. Things like salvia that we've got in this planting scheme. Salvia caradonna, if you put that near the front, when it reaches full height, it's really dense, it's thick, it's like a full stop that goes, ugh. So we don't want that at the front, we want that either in the middle or at the back. Because if you put them at the front, it stops the flow. You're immediately drawn to it and you're like, I can't see through, I don't know what's next. So it's just about careful positioning of your plants. And before you commit them to the ground, move them around, go and have a cup of coffee, go and check on the RHS plant finder to make sure that they're in the right spot, and then commit them. But don't worry, if they don't work, you can always dig them up and move them on. And again, at the bottom of the garden, we've got that same repetition, pop, pop, pop. We've got the box balls that are going to give you the evergreen structure, the planting scheme that I talked you through earlier in the day. And I'm really pleased with this one. I think it's really consistent. And although the house is obviously still there, and there's not much you can do about that, when you stood at the end, and I'll show you a photo now, you can see how your eye's immediately drawn down to the planting rather than up towards that house. So if you've liked this video, why not subscribe to my YouTube channel where there are loads more garden design hints, tips and hacks. Whether it's an overlooked garden, shady beds, problem gardens or small awkward design, I've probably got a guide for you. So I've been Garden Ninja, don't forget to subscribe. See you soon and happy gardening.